Project Next.
Purifying the humankind.
And that humankind is such a wonderful, divine entity here on this planet. And in this second hour, I've invited just a maverick that has been doing deep studies into law, into you as individuals, you as the backing of the financial system that runs this planet. Just amazing esoteric and metaphysical perspective on the law. And as you know, a long time ago, we were talking about the UCC1, the straw man and everything. Well, that technology hasn't gotten away. It's morphed. It's been better understood and hammered out. And the man that we are speaking to this evening is someone who on an ongoing basis is helping people take the shackles off of their minds and their finances and their bodies. His name is Winston Shrout. His website is Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce. This is the way we are starting off this new year in letting you know that there is a remedy to your ailments, that you don't have to feel subject, you don't have to feel put upon and out of control. There is a way to control your life and participate in it so much better than delegating it to powers that might not have your interest best at heart. His website is www.WSSIC.com. Winston is on the line, and it is an honor to have you starting us out in 2013. Hi, Mr. Shrout. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. Everything going okay with you?
Well, it's going much better now because I am, learning. I am dipping deep into the resources that you are providing so many millions of people around the world. It is very exciting to see legal technology and how it is so much a part of us. We are kind of like living law or somehow, or else law is an externalization of our lives or something. That's just it's so fascinating, sir.
Well, really, when we start to talk about, the little technologies about this or that and so forth, they're sort of, in some respects, they're kind of like Band-Aids. And what we would really like to accomplish is a perhaps deeper understanding of why we have these things. Because again, you can give somebody an aspirin and it might make your headache go away for a while, but until you go to the source of the problem, then the headache will come back. And so we're trying to, at least give out a few Band-Aids and a few aspirins to those who require them. But those are temporary. Our hope is that we're upgrading the understanding and helping people to come to know themselves and how they relate to all these things. One of the things that, as a social scientist, I guess you would call me,
good,
is, I do look into society and how people think and what they do and so forth and so on. And I would hope that, the efforts, that we've made here at Solutions in Commerce has at the very least encouraged people to raise their moral level. And so we have become so accustomed in this country and across the world to involve ourselves in immoral activities that we have accepted it as the norm. And so a little bit of introspection on all of our parts and a reevaluation, perhaps, of our level of morality or spirituality or whatever you want to call the thing, certainly is in order. And as we come into this new year, this new calendar year anyway, actually the new year started at the winter solstice. But in any event, as we start into this new calendar year, as it were,
yes,
and we should all resolve, to upgrade ourselves and the way we do things. And when we start to see that upgrade in the way we conduct ourselves in relationship to our fellow men, then these little technologies and Band-Aids and aspirins that we give out may be of value.
You mean of lesser value? Oh, more value because they'll be more effective if people acted morally.
Yeah, what we're trying to do with a lot of this technology and so forth is simply bring it to people's attention that we are perhaps acting improperly in commerce and in our relationships, with our neighbors, with our states and with our countries and so forth. And so I have found over the years, studying society, as it were, that probably problems are not resolved from the top down, but most usually they're resolved from the bottom up. And so as the people change their perspective, as they change the way they do things, and as they upgrade or supersize their thought process and so forth, and then we hope that we can have the foundation firmly fixed under us to make the changes as we move up and up and up.
Well, it's interesting you're saying that, sir, because I know a lot of folks were really afraid when they heard about these prison camps, these concentration camps around the United States, etc. But yet, somehow, the nice upgrade that's happened to Americans made it such that they didn't react to being shafted and shaken down and completely financially raped by these parasites and vampires, that those so-called prison camps became, nobody was shipped off. Nobody was taken. There wasn't the huge outpourings in the street like you see in Greece and things like that. And I don't know, for some reason, when you say that, that kind of reminds me that maybe, a lot of our folks are naturally making a shift upwards.
I think so. One of the things that the dark forces, if I can use that term,
you can,
the Cabal or the Illuminati or whoever you want to call these folks,
reptiles,
yeah, whatever they are. In any event, they feed upon fear. In other words, when you generate energy that is as a result of your fear, then they collect that energy, and that's what makes them go forward.
Yes.
And so, the Christian scripture, if I can quote that a little bit,
of course,
states basically, that a perfect love drives out all fear. And so, obviously, then the goal of people would be to develop, that measure of love and consideration, that what's called unconditional love, that would drive away the fear. And if you can drive away the fear, then you're going to starve the vampires to death.
Awesome. That's right. That's very, very true. And I'm sure part of it is kind of the shock of looking at what has happened to Christianity, what has happened to the major Islam, et cetera, and these major religions of the world that help create that fear.
Well, I think we have to do a reevaluation, and I think a reevaluation is taking place in as much as the various organized religions are losing membership at a higher rate.
Yes.
As the people opt for spirituality. And so as people go to the organizations, they go to the meetings, they participate in a fraternal way, then there's nothing wrong with that. We all should be of that mindset. But I think the rising generation has found that they could not find the spirituality that they were seeking in the organizations. For instance, in the United States, with few exceptions, and there are exceptions, but with few exceptions, all of the churches have become IRS 501c3 churches, which means they are dictated to by an international organization. And so in consequence of that, spirituality has fled, and the people realize it.
Yes.
And so that's why they are seeking another source, for that void that they find in their soul. And so anyway, I'm not trying to put down the churches or the good works they do and all those kind of things, with the exception that they probably ought to reevaluate, who is in control of the pulpit. And if they find out that a foreign entity has taken control of their pulpit, then they might want to reevaluate their tax status.
Hallelujah to that, sir. Absolutely.
Glory. Say glory.
Glory. On the lines, Winston Shrout. Website is WSSIC.com, Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce. Mr. Shrout, the Patriot Movement has been investigating sovereignty, states' rights, strawman, and the like for decades. Why?
Well, again, I think the people are starting to become more enlightened. As I have tried to preach time and again, that any system, whether it be government or political, whether it be churches, education, or whatever, but any attempt to do a thing which does not comply with natural law will at some time fail. And so I think, we've reached the brink of failure on many, in many situations, and the people realize that.
Yes.
And so the energy has gone out of it, and the people are looking around to say, what happened? We don't know what happened here, but we need to investigate this situation so that we don't become a victim of it any further. So, for the last, for a good number of years, a lot of those things were hidden, and then a lot of people, good investigators, started to question. They started to dig into the histories to see how things came about. And so we've had a great deal that's been revealed in the previous decades and so forth, upon which we're, at this point, trying to capitalize.
I was wondering, when we look at some of our founding documents, sir, when we look at the Articles of the Confederation, the Preamble, the Bill of Rights, Constitution, which really harnesses and holds the dreams of the people, that elevates them into that standing as a sovereign. Is there any one of those documents, like if somebody was going to start doing their research to understand where we live and how precious it is and how much we really need to fight for it, is there any document which really harnesses the dreams of the people?
Well, let me give you Winston's maxim number one. Winston's maxim number one is we only write down the things we don't believe. As strange as that may seem. Now, when we start to talk about the creation of documents, what we're doing is we're putting our innermost feelings and so forth on paper, which creates a fiction. For instance, if I told you to write down the things that I'm fixing to say, how would it come out? So, okay, I'll give you a little bit of an experiment here. I'm going to make a phrase, and I'm going to say it three ways. Okay, go to town. Go to town? Go to town. Okay?
Okay.
Now, if you wrote that down on paper, how would it come out? No one would really know because they didn't hear what I said, you see.
Yes.
And so when you start to write down concepts, your innermost feelings, perhaps, and all these kind of things onto a written document, you have turned it into a fiction. so how do we express, truth? Can we put it on paper? Probably not, because again, a piece of paper is a two-dimensional instrument. And so we lose so much, when we do create these documents. Now, would it be more to our benefit to have heard someone express the sentiments that were in the Declaration of Independence, that were in the Bill of Rights? Would it be more to our benefit to have heard those people express those things verbally, so we could catch what they were really trying to express from their heart? And the answer is yes, we would be a much more a benefit if that could have happened.
Right.
Unfortunately, they did not have the technology to record, those kind of things. So all we have at this point is the written word, and there is much controversy created, when we rely upon the written word. So we take the written word, we read it, we study it, we think about it, we internalize it so that it becomes a part of us, and not just because it's a document that's held in some museum somewhere.
Very good. And so when you hear people on the Supreme Court adding,
Supreme Court?
They call themselves that, the United States Supreme Court, that fiction.
A bunch of old fuddy-duddies in black clothes. That's all I know about them.
Yes, sir. And I'm telling you, boy, unfortunately, how much we imbue them with power, they act it out. And what they say is that the Constitution is alive and they get to do whatever they want with it.
Which Constitution?
Probably. Well,
the only thing they can rule upon is the Constitution of the United States, which is statutized.
Right.
They have nothing to say about the Constitution for the United States.
Well, would you tell us the difference between both of those, sir?
Yeah. The original document that was created is the Constitution for the United States of America. And then they decided when they wanted to go into the fiction that they would statutize it. And so that reference is the Constitution of the United States, and it's statutized in the United States Code, most of which has been put in brackets, which means it has no legal bearing anyway. So people, need to make that differentiation so they'll understand what has happened and what is being commented on. For instance, what's called the Supreme Court of the United States, that sits in Washington, D.C., can in fact make corporate rulings upon the Constitution of the United States. But that's why I was saying they have nothing to say about the Constitution for the United States of America.
So in law school, what are people studying if they go into constitutional law? Do they get to see?
They don't study constitutional law.
Huh.
They study procedures.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we do too. That's how we deal with the attorneys and lawyers and all those kind of people. Is that we deal with procedures also. Okay.
But if they were to, when they're saying, well, go read the Constitution, I mean, do they, they still look similar to one another, the Constitution for, the Constitution of, but the fictional one, how can they distinguish? I'm trying to...
Well, I'm going to refer you back to Winston's maxim number 1.
Okay.
And I really don't care which one they talk about.
Ah, very good, very good.
If the law is not written upon your heart, it is of no value to me or actually to any other man or woman.
Oh,
It has to be written upon your heart. And that's, again, going back to some of the comments of this fellow that we call Jesus.
Right.
He says the law has to be written upon your heart. And if it's not upon your heart, of what value is it? Because if it's not in your heart, you cannot express it on paper anyway. Go to town.
Yes.
Go to town. You see what I mean?
Right, exactly.
It's all two-dimensional. I mean, we're supposed to be in a three-dimensional world, and yet we're making reference to a two-dimensional element here. And I just have to ask the question of what value is that?
Right. Well, it's kind of a perplexing idea because, of course, we know of what Jesus said because it was written, and that's gone through different languages, that's gone through different penmanship, etc. But is it that when we hear those words and how we feel once we hear those words, we know that it was,
yes, well, the concepts that are expressed, if someone will take those and internalize them, then they'll have value.
Very good.
But just because it's written on a piece of paper in a book somewhere, it's not altogether that good a deal.
Okay, but you can place a foundation
Yes.
upon the fiction, which is Jesus's writings. I mean, doesn't it become a fiction because it was written?
Yeah, we reduced it down to two dimensions.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. So two-dimensional representations still impact us, still are important, but they are to be internalized, and that's the highest form of living.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Excellent, sir. When we coming into 2013, here we went through December 21st of 2012, sir. For you, what from within your eyes and what what happened at that time?
Well, if you want to go to the scientific information that was given out by valid scientists, I mean, there were a great number of things that happened. I mean, I have somewhere here, I have about a 7-page report of the physical nature of what occurred with that alignment and so forth, and it's very, very favorable. As far as what changes, that I saw, some reports came in that they said, "Hey, wow, this was a great day." Other people come back and say, "Well, we didn't really see much." As for myself, I have probably for most of my adult life been operating in the fourth dimension anyway.
Yes.
And so, when things like that occur, it doesn't have a radical effect on my system like it might on some others.
Right.
And so, what was of most value to me was to read the scientific analysis of the energy and so forth, the effect it had upon the planet, what we can expect as a result of those things. And it's very, very favorable. I was really impressed with that scientific analysis.
Now, who is doing that kind of scientific analysis? Because certainly NASA, what we have here in the United States, all were just poo-pooing about the Mayan calendar tragedy, which is great.
Do not rely upon NASA.
Okay. All right.
Do not rely upon the report of people who make their living or who are funded by the cabal.
Very good.
Because they're not going to tell you the truth.
And who out there within the scientific realm is giving reliable information?
I don't have that report right in front of me.
Right.
If you go on the internet and search, for 2012 and all those kind of things, I think there's a lot of information. Let's see. One good source, hold on here.
Oh, that's sweet.
Is, let's see, it's right here on my computer. Oh, Mission Galactic Freedom.
Mission Galactic Freedom.
If you go to their website, they have many reports from all manner of places and people and all over the world, really. And that they seem to be a real good source. And there's several others that have devoted their websites to this particular topic.
Well, I'm so impressed and fascinated that from your work in looking at the legal field to going out to the information around the Galactic Federation and this planet being able to enter into a larger universe, larger neighborhood of intelligent, amazing, beautiful life out there and stuff is such a great breadth and depth of knowledge that I can imagine the piece that you would write out about the history of the world and just an amazing time it is. And so
we do have some major shifts in the collective consciousness of the planet on this basis that probably since 1980, certainly since 2000, we've had a huge influx on the planet of souls who have never been on this planet before. I mean, a lot of the folks here, have been on this planet for a long, long time. But we do have a huge influx of entities, souls, if you want to call them that, who have never been here before. And so as a result of that, we have a new infusion of energy because these ones that are coming here, from wherever they came from, I really can't say, I don't know, but they are not burdened down with the backpacks or the baggage that many of the people here are carrying. In other words, they're not stuck on that karma wheel that so many people are.
And how will that help us?
Oh, I know several of them.
Is it that just the way that they are will influence other folks to grow up or grow out?
Their position basically is, hey, we're not going to participate in that.
Right.
It's kind of like a sit-down strike. They just come along and say, hey, they look around, with all the stuff we have going on here and all the mess we have. They say, hey, we're not participating in that. Now, if you don't participate in it, then what will happen to that system? It will at the very least die out. For instance, some years ago, I was watching an interview. Somebody was interviewing a high official in the IRS, and they simply asked the IRS official, what would happen tomorrow if nobody paid taxes? And the IRS guy said, we'd be out of business. Well, it's the same thing with this influx of entities, that have come here. They simply say, we're not going to participate in that. So what's going to happen to the system then? Right. It's going to go away.
And instead, they'll put their energies and help other people put their energies into into what's next.
Well, sure.
Absolutely, really great. Really great.
There's this kind of humorous definition of insanity, and that is, you do the same thing the same way and expect different results. And so we here on this planet for centuries and millennia and whatnot have been doing the same thing, making the same mistakes, trying to do, and expecting some kind of different result. It ain't going to work. That's the definition of insanity. And so we have, the opportunity, through education and so forth, to stop doing it, that way, make an improvement, and move on. And so that's one of the reasons why we have these educational programs and seminars, and there's a lot of people across the country doing this. And so we do these things to say, look, there are alternative ways to solve some of these problems. Let me explain to you a different way to do this. And so that's what we do. And so we hope, that our efforts will at least, open up, a new opportunity for people so that they're not bound down by the same insanity that has been passed on to us from generations of the past.
On the lines, Winston Shrout. His website is www.WSSIC. That stands for Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce.com, and we're going to be getting into that. What is it? Let's see. There are so many different kinds of law. We have commerce law, we have common law, we have admiralty, we have canon law. We're going to come back and talk with this maestro about all of those different fictions, if there's a hierarchy, and how we start to make this kind of knowledge work for us in 2013. Stay tuned. Project Next.
Toward the refinement of humankind.
Initiating Activism 4.0. Your portal will be found at projectnext.us. That's www.projectnext.us. And of course, go to www.kpfk.org. There you will find lots of amazing programmers, great cultural events, a place to meet where you will find people of like mind, or maybe not so like mind, but this is what we got to bridge. We got to bridge that gap, come together, because it's all out there in front of us. We know what it's about. Unconditional love, getting over the neurosis, all that good stuff. And certainly the man on the line tonight is all about that. Winston Shrout of Solutions in Commerce. And so, Winston, before the break, I was just kind of rattling off all of these different areas of law, such as equity, such as commerce, such as admiralty, common, canon. How do we understand how these morph together? What's important? Where do we find remedy? Where are we safe and sovereign? How do we understand all these overlapping traditions?
First, you have to understand that all the things you mentioned right there are just all pure BS anyway.
Great.
You have to go back to the beginning. You have to go back to the start of things. The reason why people interact is because they obviously see some advantage to that interaction. And so in order to interact, they establish what we would basically call contracts or agreements to interact. And then within that contract, there's certain provisions that they have agreed to in order to facilitate the execution of that contract. Now, if everything goes smoothly, everybody's happy, and the contract closes, having been completed. But if there's some problem that results in some sort of breach of contract, there's where the law comes in. The law is the remedy for the breach of the contract. See, a lot of people, go around, talking about the law of this, the law of that, or what jurisdiction, all those kind of things. But the important thing to do is to understand that the law itself is only the remedy for a breach. If there is no breach of contract, there is not any law, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So we have developed these various jurisdictions of law to facilitate the place where the contract was made. For instance, we talk about the common law, we talk about the law merchant law, we talk about the admiralty, the maritime. All these words and titles refer to where the contract is to be executed.
Very good.
So based upon that, there have been over the centuries competition. I mean, we have one court over here, we have another court over here, and this judge over here sees there's money to be made if he can steal some of the jurisdiction from this other court over here. So they did. They fought and scrapped, about who had the jurisdiction over this, who had the jurisdiction over that, because the courts and the judges realized, hey, there's money to be made if we can fill up our calendar.
Now, Neil, could you give us an example of that?
Yeah, the Admiralty.
Tell us more.
Basically, the Admiralty was created to deal with commerce, in particular the commerce that occurred upon the salt water. And so when the Admiralty judges saw that there was money to be made if they could start to adjudicate on the land, then that's what they did. And so they put pressure on, they did this and they did that, and finally they got rid of the common law, and then they moved from the salt water up to the waterways, up through the fresh water, and then they started claiming this and claiming that, and then they and funniest thing was, long about, I don't know, it's back in the 70s or 80s, I think, the government had the Coast Guard come in and resurvey all of North America.
What?
The purpose, now get this. When the Army Corps of Engineers, way back in the 1920s, came in and surveyed North America, they determined what sea level was, and then they evaluated all of the land mass based upon that measurement. Okay, so that was the Army Corps of Engineers, the National Geographic Survey people. They did that. So in order to facilitate the Admiralty jurisdiction, the government had the Coast Guard come in and reevaluate North America, and they determined that sea level was the highest point in North America, which I think is Mount McKinley. So based on that, all of the land mass is underwater.
Get out! No!
Oh, they got survey stakes. Matter of fact, I knew a fellow over there in Utah that they had put up some kind of survey stake on his property. He blew his stack. Oh, did he blow his stack? Because that survey stake on his property indicated his property was underwater so many feet.
Wow.
So his property was, I don't know, maybe 15,000 feet below sea level. But anyway, that just shows you how the various jurisdictions have competed for business. That's all it is. It's a business.
And wow, that's incredible. So who did they push out at that point? So didn't they push out the people, or who was behind Admiralty law? Because common law was something of the land and for people, or who were they fighting against, sir?
Well, what they were attempting to do was to enforce the constructive contracts, the implied contracts, the adhesion contracts, and so forth that have been created by the fictional government who regulate the country by the Constitution of the United States. And so the only way they could do that then was to put the Admiralty at the top of the heap. And so all these little nuances, like surveying, infringes around the flags and in-rim suits and all this kind of foolishness, all it has to do with is the attempt of the Admiralty to remove the competition.
Well, I guess they're thinking that everything that comes onto land, or a lot of it, came from the sea or something. But
they got their crazy ideas about all that stuff. But any reasonable person that would sit down and evaluate all that stuff would come to the same conclusion I did, which is basically it's all a bunch of hooey.
Yes, in search of money.
In search of money.
And why is it, sir, that when you fall off your moral compass, you pay so heavily for that? Why is there such a pound of flesh for these, breaking these contracts and things like that?
It pardon my expression, is because people that are just too lazy to go out and work.
Okay, very good.
And they want to sit, on their benches and behind their desk and all that kind of stuff, and make their living upon somebody else's labor.
Very good.
That is completely unnatural. And so that system has to fail. If you go back to the story in the Bible, if it has any credibility, when mankind was cast out of paradise, they were under the necessity at that point of laboring for their sustenance, but making their living by the sweat of their brow.
Right.
And most of mankind don't like that too much, and so they devise means and methods to steal someone else's labor.
Oh, very good.
For instance, in the United States today, about approximately 50% of the working population works for the government.
It's so insane.
Well, of course it's insane. I'll give you a perfect example of it. We had, out here in the West, things are a little bit different than back east.
How much different?
And so the story goes, and I heard it from a reliable source, so I kind of believe it. But anyway, somebody from back east who wasn't familiar with the Western land and all the things that happen out here, they were hired by the Bureau of Land Management to come out in a supervisory capacity. And so they did an analysis of the cost and what was being spent for what, and this, that, and the other. And so they put in a recommendation to those above them that there's way too many cattle guards out here in the West, and they said that they ought to fire half of them.
And what happened?
Well, the guy was labeled as an idiot and sent back east. He thought a cattle guard was a man setting guarding cattle. But see, he was unfamiliar with grazing, with livestock, and all those kind of things. And so he just looked what was on paper, did not go out and investigate or even find out what a cattle guard was. And in consequence of that, he made a very foolish and ridiculous recommendation. And so we have these kind of things going on all the time. Are you familiar with what's known as the Peter Principle?
I have heard that. I should know exactly what that is. Please restate it.
Well, the basic premise of the Peter Principle is that someone is elevated to their highest level of incompetency, and that's where they stay. In other words, they can't be elevated any higher than that, and they don't go backwards, you see. And so somebody who has certain abilities and so forth keep getting promoted and promoted until they can't be promoted any further because they're not able. And so then they remain at their highest level of incompetency. And so we have all these organizations, corporations, businesses, and so forth, which are completely dominated by incompetent people. Does that make sense?
They were competent up to a point.
Let's say for instance in a corporation there might be 10 positions, all the way from mail clerk all the way up to CEO.
Okay.
And so somebody with abilities is promoted, up through the various levels and so forth until they can't be promoted any further because they're not able to.
Very good.
So where do they stay? They stay at their highest level of incompetency.
Okay. So
in consequence of that, all of these levels, if it's 10 or 20 or whatever, all of these levels are being staffed by an individual who is incompetent. Go study the principle. It'll make sense to you.
Yeah. No. Maybe it's just that flip, that incompetency, because they were competent to a point, and then they reach a level and they become incompetent, but they're not doing
demoted back to where they can do something of value.
Right, exactly. Okay, very good. You know what? Let me ask you this, sir. Here it is. We just it came close to this so-called financial cliff, et cetera. In another 30 days, we're going to have to hear about them raising the debt ceiling, et cetera. And I'm sure people really want to know if the U.S. has been bankrupt, or if it is bankrupt, or how is it that we are able to take so much debt on in the United States? How is it that they are capable of doing this?
Well, first off, all that hoopla about all that stuff was for the purpose of creating more fear.
Yes.
And so, going on that basis, that it's all a bunch of tomfoolery.
Okay, very good.
Now, one of the first concepts of a debt currency that you have to understand is that a debt currency, in order to be valid, must have a redeemer or a redemption in order to be a valid debt. And so, all that's talk about, going over the edge and this and that and the other, that's all foolishness.
Okay.
Because we do have a redemption of all the debt on the planet, and it's held in the collateral accounts.
Okay. Very good.
That's international accounts that hold the gold, that back the currencies on the planet. So, as long as that gold was in place, there was no danger of the debt not being redeemed. All you have to do is send it back Treasury direct to the collateral accounts. That's what accepted for value is all about.
Okay. Because people, of course, I think this might be one of the first times that people are hearing, sir, that there is collateral to back this debt.
Correct. And so, again, the only problem we have in the financial community, and the problem that has arisen, is when banks or financial institutions illegally mirror the collateral accounts and trade upon that. And what that creates is what's referred to as toxic derivatives. And the reason they're toxic is because they have no redemption.
Okay, very good.
You cannot redeem those toxic derivatives. Now, the purpose of the Basel agreements, in particular the Basel III agreements, was to force the banks into transparency so that they have to prove, where those derivatives came from. And if it's found out that those derivatives or that money or whatever you want to call it was illegally created, it will be removed off their books.
Why would the banks have the opportunity to parallel or create a fictional collateral account? How could they even do that?
Illegal trading.
Okay. That's because the source of these derivatives, as I'm sure that there's some people that have done some very interesting investigations of it, but could you define for us what a derivative is?
Well, I didn't do real well in calculus in college, but I can try.
You're too sweet. Better than me.
Well, what it basically comes down to is that we're kind of back with Pavlov and his dog slobbering every time he rang the bell.
Yes.
Now, what that basically means is that people won't work unless you give them something for it. In other words, you expect a paycheck on Friday, or you won't come back on Monday. Yeah. And so after World War II, one purpose of which was to consolidate all that gold. What was developed was a way to create usable currency so that the workers could have something at the end of the day for their labor. And so, based upon that, and the the Marshall Plan and all those kind of things, there were programs put together, trading programs, to create usable currency. Now, it's not, you can call it money or whatever you want to call it, but it is something that was put into the hands of people so they would come back to work on Monday.
But what happened previous to that?
We were operating with hard currency, what you would call, gold.
Very good.
Silver or some of those things, which have a certain amount of intrinsic value, but not a whole lot. But because people valued gold and silver, then that's why the system worked. It could have been wampum, it could have been tobacco, it could have been coffee beans, or whatever. But people seem to value the what's called noble metals, because the noble metals don't rust, they don't fade away and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, our monetary system at that point was measured in gold and silver. Now, so we got past that thought process in 1933 because, it was part of a master plan to consolidate the commercial gold upon the planet to stop war. That was what the idea was. Didn't work out that way, unfortunately. No. That's what the idea was. And so then we went into more of a situation of debtor and creditor situations, whereas the people, because of their willingness to work, gave credibility to the currency. So the currency that we presently use in most of the planet is based upon the good faith and credit of the people. If the people did not give the money any credibility, then it would be worthless.
Because we work
for it. The money that we have is redeemable by the labor of the people.
That's right. Very good. Wow, I think that's so fascinating.
Now, you're not going to hear that down at the college.
Yeah, no.
They teach something else.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense.
Of course.
That it isn't just the perception of the value of it. No, the value is the not slave labor. It's the sweat equity, or
Of course.
The sweat.
The only true capital is labor and what it produces. We simply use the currency as an incentive for exchange of labor. That's all we're doing.
And the fiction of this currency, that they're able to fractionalize it, et cetera. That's what I think
there's nothing wrong with that, because look at how many billions of people we have on the planet.
Right.
We need a whole bunch of currency. The only problem is when the banks decide they want to hoard it.
Yes.
So that's what we're working on, is to take the greedy fingers out of the pot and make a distribution so the people will come back to work on Monday.
Right. Very good. And when it comes to that fight, sir, how is that being done? I've heard something out of New York that there was a $42 trillion lawsuit. I heard from another individual that $12 trillion. We just have a couple of minutes left. Maybe just a note on how we are doing with. You were saying that the momentum is in our court, that there is energy, et cetera, coming to back this up. How is that fight going to get those greedy hands out of it and those hoarders away from it?
I would have to say it's going very well.
Great. And how do people know in their busy daily lives right now in their survival mode versus thriving mode? What's going to be an indication of this kind of good news?
When the IRS goes away.
We will see that?
Yep. Yes, indeed.
In our lifetime?
Probably before the end of the year.
Get out.
I couldn't believe it's still. I can't even believe it's still here.
Really?
That'd be a real good indication that we've turned a major corner. Again, if you look at the purpose of any of the taxing agencies, whether it be the IRS or the state or whoever, they're simply commissioned to collect the interest on the national debt, or what's called the national debt. It's not really the national debt; it's really the federal debt.
Yes.
It's not a debt of the people.
Right.
It's a debt of the corporation.
Right.
And so they have used trickery and subterfuge to convince people, that it's their debt when in fact it's not. It's the corporate debt.
Yes. Right, and we're one of the assets of this corporation, and they take the pound of flesh out of us.
Well,
even though
you are if you agree to be. There's
Right.
a whole lot of people that aren't.
Right. Very true. Very true. Well, this is something, of course, when you go to Winston Shrout's website, Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce, that's www.WSSIC. This is what you get to see and to unwind so that you get to have choice. And if you don't want to be a part of that yoke, you get to take it off and to just empower yourself. And so Mr. Shrout this time has, of course, flown by so quick. I hope you will join us again and again and again to share the good news. And I just appreciate so much that you do, sir.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Winston Shrout, Solutions in Commerce. Please go there. He has webinars. He does amazing work out there on your behalf. And so, just go and get some. And when you expose yourself over and over again, you'll start to see the game and how to just exit out of your life. Before we go, I just want to say, thank you so much. It's been it's so great to do this show for KPFK. I am going to be expanding the show from 2 hours to 1 hour. That's right, going from 2 hours a week down to 1 hour because I'm going to be going to school and doing things out there during this heightened energy and time of action, and that's what I'm going to be delegating a lot of my energies to. And so I just want to make sure and always do a fantastic show for all of you lovelies. And so I'm going to be doing an hour a week, and so I thanked Roy so much. We talked about it, and I think that's a really great solution. So I will continue to be with you guys on from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. It's just always an honor to be a part of KPFK. But just to let you know, that this will be the last 2 hour show, and you will get a dynamite, jam-packed 1 hour show starting next week. And so, yes, great stuff. It's all good, and always a pleasure to be with you every week. And so that's when we'll see you next week. You've been listening to Project Next on KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, archived at kpfk.org. Join us next week and help build the future.